I was born in Havana, Cuba, but at 6 years old, my family came and lived on 3rd and Monroe at first. And it was, I didn't speak English. I had to learn how to speak English. And, then we moved to 514 Monroe Street, where the VE Jays started their rehearsals, actually, at the basement of 514 Monroe.
Yeah, I was born in New York City and moved to Hoboken when I was 2. My parents came a little later, but I grew up in Hoboken. Went to high school with these guys. We went to Hoboken High School, and I lived in primarily on Adams Street, 5th and Adams, and I think we met in junior high school, I believe. Junior high school it was called at that time, and then we proceeded to Hoboken High, where we wreaked havoc with everybody, rehearsing all over the place and trying to get the band started, and that's basically my story.
I was born in Hoboken, and so I didn't realize I was the only native Hobokener. That's news to me. So this video is already doing me a favor. The second thing is Omar and I went to school together.
Yes,
as a matter of fact, we went to grammar school. I went all the way through school together. Actually, we were pretty much school buddies the whole way through.
Eddie was the smartest kid in the class.
Omar and I manipulated, or basically owned, the top 2 spots in every class we were ever in. And it was just fun. And we were always within like half a percentage point of each other. So it was great. But what we, as we got older, this is where we could talk about later how music influenced me, or how I got influenced by where I lived, which was right on top of one of the hottest bars in the town, in that time period. But during that time, I ran. To be quite honest with you, this whole thing magically started to me, because I still don't know in my mind. I think these guys were talking about getting it together, because I wasn't the one who came up with the idea. And then I was like, you know what? The guys downstairs let me go in, and they've been showing me how to play drums, and maybe I could be the drummer for you guys. And that's basically how it started. It was kind of like a lark, actually. But then I think Omar and I and Frankie and Peter, I think we're all OCD. We're very compulsive and obsessive about anything that we did. And this thing was no different. As a matter of fact, it became an obsession, I think, that never went away for any of us 3 anyway.
It was my idea to start the band. Yep. I was standing outside Zanzibar with Eddie, right outside the First and Monroe. And, the Beatles craze had started. After I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I'm sure for Eddie too.
Oh yeah.
We got the idea, man. We got to form a band, and so my mom bought me this guitar there was a Guild guitar factory in Hoboken, New Jersey. Most people don't know that, on Observer Highway. And for $80, which is pretty good money today, my mom bought me this guitar. And I had a crappy little amp to start with. And Ed had just a snare and a cymbal.
Yeah. Bare bones.
And we're just like bare bones, just toying around. I started guitar lessons. But then, my dad got me a Silvertone amp from Sears. And then, boy, in 4 months, I knew 4 chords, and the 3 of us were already out there playing. We went down to the shore of Keensburg at a family gathering. We were playing 4 chords over and over, the doo-wops. And Frankie had that crooner voice, And that's how it all started. That was the beginnings. Later on, we added a rhythm guitarist, Peter Romano, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. And then we forced Frankie to learn bass. Frankie didn't want to play bass guitar. But I said, we have two guitars and a drum, man. You know, the Beatles have a bass player. You got to play bass. And little by little, he begrudgingly learned how to play bass, and then we took off after that.
The Zanzibar, as I said, there was something called the Chitlin Circuit in black music in that time period that we were doing this. This was concurrent with the Beatles, you know, and anybody who lived in that time period knew that it was an even split. It just wasn't rock and roll. It was transformative, the time period, because you were coming from the doo-wop era, and R&B was having a huge influence, and then along came the Beatles, and it was overwhelming in its influence on me. I mean, all of those things all contributed to what my likes were at that time and what they developed into. But what the Chitlin Circuit was as the promoters of the black music scene were getting their bands known around, it was just a series of locations that were in the New York area, up and down the East Coast, that each of the name bands would go. So I had people like Betty Everett and the Tams, Bobby Blues Bland, all of these unbelievably talented black musicians that I would meet, and I was the only white guy that was going into the bar. It was a black bar. I mean, it was a black section of Hoboken. I lived at 601 First Street. That was the address of the Zanzibar. I lived on top of the Zanzibar. and what was great is, and I always often tell this story, my bed would shake every night. Because it just, and I loved it. I just thought I was in heaven, because I'm like, this is awesome. So I'd go downstairs and I talked to Charlie. I said, Charlie, you know, can I go in the back and see these guys? He goes, oh yeah, sure you can. You know, you live here. It's okay. You could do that. Then I go back there, and then the drummers, each time a band had come in, I'd ask the drummers to show me some stuff. You know, like, could you just show me a little bit about this or that? And you do, and I got a lot of it influenced the way I thought about playing drums, because if you think about it, and back to those days, those drummers didn't do solos. The drummer was not the focus. The drummer was the pocket guy. All he did was just make the music have something to lay on top of, which was the same way Ringo Starr was, which is where where my influences came from. And as a matter of fact, I almost had to break Ringo's arm to get him to do a solo. He wasn't interested. You know, I think it was in one song on a White Album, they got him to do one little 2-minute thing that, you know, boom, boom, it was really elementary. He just wasn't that kind of a drummer. He was more a pocket rhythm drummer, and just there to lay down and be there solid underneath the music. And that's what those things then also enabled us to, and Omar, I think you remember this happening also, like those guys would be on their break in between rehearsals or whatever. They go outside, play off the point with us. You know, I don't know if you remember, we had that precipice on the bottom of the building across the street.
Right,
you get a high bounce and bang it over there. First floor was a single, second floor of the building was a double. And if you hit it over the roof, well, you lost the ball, the game was over. Or you had to go up on the roof and get the ball. But the thing that was the most interesting and influential was just hearing and feel. I guess the best thing I could say is it started me feeling the music. That was always what still drives me to this day, to feel like I was in the middle of the music. And that came from me sleeping on top of bands playing.
Yeah, that must have been something. I did walk in one time when Bobby Blue Bland was there, and he sent me out for a grocery run. He sent me out to buy him a loaf of bread and ham and cheese. And I do remember also, I didn't sleep above like the club, but standing outside Zanzibar and listening to the bands. It was a real inspiration. As far as other music scene in Hoboken, I don't know of any other, other than we started it pretty much. We started a music scene there, you know. Then other bands came after us, but as far as like pop and rock and R&B, from our end, we were the originators of music scene in Hoboken.
And I think I've had other. I'm still friends with people that became, you know, or started groups after us, like the Lost Souls, Hank
Oh, sure.
Keneshigi, and all
Sure.
of those guys. I'm friends with all those guys. Mike
Oh, Julio
Arlone.
Fernandez, you know,
Sure.
from Gyro, is a great friend of mine.
Yep. And that they are the first ones to tell you, you guys inspired us to do what we do. And they still play and record now. I don't know if you've seen any of their stuff. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Mhm.
And they call themselves something different. It's not the same. You know, they have 16 incarnations of the band. You know how it goes, Omar. You
Yeah, right.
collaborate with different people, and you
That's
go
right.
under a different name.
That's
But
correct.
you're absolutely right there. And I didn't know that. I mean, I never thought of it that way. I mean, we were doing what we were doing.
Right.
You know, I don't think we were thinking about being
No, it just turned
pioneers
out
or
that
anything.
way. It just
Yeah,
turned out that way.
Yeah,
you
we
know?
were having fun.
Well, I think the one thing was that we only had one junior high school and one high school, and everyone went to the same school. So it was a kind of a amalgamation of people, and everybody brought in, you know, bits of their heritage of music that they grew up with, and plus whatever was happening with rock and everything. I think that's you know, that's the main thing that happened in Hoboken, and it just grew from there.
I think it was like the small town, you know,
Right.
the amazing what was your contrast between living in this mile square city, where it's like you had this small town feeling, everybody knows each other,
Right.
and you're like
Right.
across the river from Gotham City there, you know. And it was an amazing way to grow up, because you had the small town warmth. There was a warmth to it, I would have to say, among the people. And then you had the opportunity to get over to New York City and see all the culture there, bands there, all the events that happened there, you know. So it was a great place to grow up, and, you know, blue collar, very down to earth kind of place. And speaking of which, I mean, one time, you know, some people called us the Beatles of Hoboken, you know. and so one time I actually had the opportunity to go to Liverpool, England, because my wife is from London, and we visited up there. And I tell you what, Hoboken and Liverpool were quite similar. It's a kind of striking. It was a city with docks like we had, and all this industry, blue collar, and then those four lads, of course, they shocked the world, you know.
I come from a family, a Hispanic family, like Omar, and we heard all the music from the Manhattan Center that was in New York. But one of the things that one of my brothers was a doo-wop singer, and so I got influenced by him, and I always liked the big band era. So we kind of incorporated that in our repertoire when we you know, started to really you know, gel with the band. And again, there were different types of music that all of us knew and loved, and I think that added to what we did.
Well, you know, how it changes. I mean, I'm, you know, we're musicians still. You know, it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime change. It's a change that affected our whole lives forever. And at the time, it was just a joy to have. Well, you know, for me, when I was like 14 and stuff, there were some times when I felt left out of being one of the few Latinos in my circle, and the band gave me this acceptance from everybody in the town. You know, they would come. that you felt accepted. I felt more accepted. It raised my self-esteem. We would play, you know, like every Wednesday, we hired out this VFW club, you know, and we charged the cover charge at the door, and we packed the place every Wednesday. And people today still on Facebook, on Facebook will talk about those days with the VJ dances, they would call them, and how much fun it was. And so we, you know, it was a joy, you know, it was a joy to play, and it was a joy to get that feedback from the audience, you know, and from our friends.
And I think one of the greatest things, and I think about the song, the actual thing that we created, dances. If you remember, there's actual dance that went with Twine Time. And we'd have the whole audience doing it, and it was the craziest, ugliest dance you ever want to see, because I remember it well. Because I would never do it, you know, because I thought you looked like an idiot doing it, but everybody loved to do it. So we, and you know, I gotta share a story with you, and I might have shared this story with you two guys before, but Alvin Cash and the Crawlers did Twine Time. I don't know.
Yes.
I guess you guys know that. Well,
Yes.
Guess what? I didn't know it. I thought we wrote it. So I'm sitting in my office at home, and my son is a noted DJ. You know, and by the way, when you talk about influence, it's generational, because it not only influenced me, my son is a pretty renowned DJ in the Philadelphia scene, and he's also they fly him down to different cities to do shows. And he's also done a lot of podcasts and stuff talking about R&B, because that's his background. But anyway, he's in there and he's playing some of his vinyls, you know, because he had a collection of thousands of vinyls. And I hear, and I'm like, wow, how did you get that? You know, I go, wow, I've been trying to get a copy of that. And he's going, Dad, what are you talking about? He's going, well, that's a song we wrote. And he goes, no, man. He goes, this is Alvin Cash and the Crawlers. And I'm going, oh, man, he ripped our song off. I can't believe that. I mean, if George Harrison can sue the Chiffons for He's So Fine, or get sued, I got to go get some money off of this, you know? He's going, Dad, you're losing your mind, man. Anyway, the influence, you talk about what it is, it just completely changed my life. It also opened up a world of friendship, because one thing, even when I ended up in Vietnam, you know, later on in my life, I found that the one thing that is true no matter what, music is an international language. It flattens all differences. Musicians don't fight or go to war. They light up a joint and get, you know, and have a fun. You know, I mean, that's you just enjoy yourself. You know, and it's like I don't know. To me, it just changed my whole perspective, and also race, biases, all of that evaporates with music. Music
That's
is love.
true.
I mean, it just is. It just is, and it's therapy. Music,
yeah.
to me, when I get down, or I just play. It could be drums, could be keyboards, could be guitar, because I've branched out from playing drums. But I can't think about what's bothering me. I'm too busy thinking about what I'm doing. I'm in it, you know, and it just consumes you in a good way, you know. And it's just, I don't know. To me, that's the influence on me. It just made my life better.
100% agree with Eddie on it's like, it has healing power, man, you know. It is therapy. I agree with him. It's a form of meditation in a way. I used to meditate traditionally in the traditional meditations, but music, it just says it comes from your soul, and it feeds your soul, put it that way.
That's a good point. But with me, the way it influenced me is I was always shy. Always been shy. You know, I in a group that people speak, you know, I'm always the quiet one. When we started the band, and then we started working out, out in different places, I just felt that, I belonged to, a unit where I didn't have to be shy. I learned to go up front and sing my songs and play my bass and everything. And in the beginning, it felt a little awkward, but after a while, I just came out of it, and it helped me perform, even to this day. So that's how I was influenced by the band and by the music.
One thing I had thought about, and you guys are going to remember, I'm the one with the most dead brain cells, but I know you guys
I don't
remember
know.
more.
Always
I
been,
don't
always
know.
been.
I got great competition for you there.
But
Frank,
I remember us being very community minded. Like, didn't we put on free things that were like in open areas? I seem to remember this fenced area that we played. Like, I don't know if it was a park.
Yeah, it was in the projects.
The projects, yeah,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah, down on
And,
Jackson Street.
down
right?
on Jackson Street. Yeah, we
Yeah.
used to. It was a fenced-in area. I think it might have been like a ball field.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, and we used to put
I
on
have
shows
a
there.
vague memory of it,
Yeah.
But I remember we did it regularly and we didn't charge because it was just
Right.
a community thing,
Right. Exactly.
And that, of course, the entrepreneurial approach of all of us was that we thought that'd just get us more attendees paying our cover at the VJ dance. Well, it was promotion. We were into promotion.
Of course. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of the projects, that's where our former member, who's no longer with us, Peter Romano, lived. He lived in the projects, and I lived just 2 blocks away, and I would go over his house. And he was also, like Frankie, a shy guy, if you recall, Frankie.
Yes, he was.
Peter was pretty shy, but I would go over his house and we'd sit there. I still remember us listening to the Stones, the first album, and like we would listen to Howlin' Wolf and all kinds of stuff, man. I would just go over there, we'd listen to records, and we have our guitars and try to pick out the riffs from Keith Richards and stuff like that, man. It was fun. It was a fun time.
It was a lot of fun. They supported us 100%. As a matter of fact, sometimes we played out in different cities, and half of Hoboken would be there.
Well, remember Frankie telling the story about the competition at Palisades Amusement Park? Remember?
Oh yeah.
Half the town showed up.
Yeah. We did a competition of Battle of the Bands in Palisades Park, and when we were rehearsing, actually, we were competing in a small lounge, and we beat out a lot of people. And then we were, the winner was able to perform on a big stage in Palisades Park. While we were competing in a small lounge, which was next to the stage, I told Omar this the other day, and he doesn't remember, but we had an MC that was announcing us, and he was on a stage, and there was a table that was next to the stage. It was about the same height. And he tried to step on a table, and the table fell. And the table fell on top of him, and he was still announcing us. He finished the whole thing. He just kept on talking through it. And that's something vivid that I remember. But we were able to sing on a big stage with Maxine Brown, which was, she had a record called Oh No, Not My Baby on Scepter Records. And I think that was the first big concert we did, correct, guys?
Yeah, and isn't that where we got an offer about this record company?
Yeah, well, the record company, that was actually...
Later?
Oh, yes, Winley Productions, right, because we already had recorded Glory and Twine Time. But someone heard us, and they referred us to Winley Productions, which was he was Paul Winley. I think his name was Paul, but he was famous for he had a hit record. He produced the Paragons and the Jesters, and they were a big doo-wop group. It was a big hit, and he heard us, and he signed us to do a record with him. And, we did a song called Ooh Baby Baby. And it was produced by a gentleman by the name of Dave Baby Cortez, who had a hit record called Happy Organ. And we recorded, and that was a whole new adventure for us. We played the Audubon Ballroom, where Malcolm X was shot, and we didn't realize that Winley, his studio was in Harlem, so we recorded that song in Harlem. But when he wanted us to do the song, debut it at the Audubon Ballroom, and we didn't realize, we had people come to pick us up to bring us to the club, and we couldn't figure out why we needed bodyguards. They had bodyguards for us, leading us up to the stage and the whole thing, and it was quite a night for all of us. I mean, we were scared. Yeah,
man. I think it was pretty much around the time that Malcolm X got shot there, and but then again, the whole cultural thing. Here's these 4 white teenage kids coming into play, and
there wasn't a white face in the audience.
No.
Yeah, like we landed as extraterrestrials, and but at the end of the show, we had them all dancing and
yeah.
And
I don't know how it happened, but
we we won them over. We won the whole audience over.
To me, and I remember this well, is that you saw a lot of look that was like quizzical looks on people's face, like WTF, exclamation, like, what is this?
What are they doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Like, who let these dudes in? But then when we started playing,
it took a little while.
Our appearance always belied what came out, because I think even from the beginning, it was from inside of us. There was a thing that people felt when we played, because we felt it. And I mean, if you think about music, you are sharing your soul. You're sharing what's inside of you. That's why you're so vulnerable, and why most musicians are ready to throw up when they're going to perform. Because you're about to go out naked. Your soul is naked. And that felt it. And I think the people in that town knew that, and none of us were. I don't know how many times I heard people that have reached out to me over the years, and I'm still friends with a lot of people in Hoboken that still live there, that will just say, you guys were the nicest, most unassuming, non-arrogant people that I have ever known in my life, because we were way beyond getting over yourself. We weren't like that way. Never really, how do I, in my mind, I always thought I was never impressed by me. I never have been. And I never will be, because I just want to be better all the time. All I want to do is get better. Every day I want to learn something new. I want to do something new. And that feeling emanated to the people that we came in contact with.
I want to say about the Audubon Ballroom is always that also we had a pretty good R&B repertoire. We played James Brown. We played I Feel Good. We played things like Midnight Hour, Wilson Pickett, Knock on Wood, and other R&B kind of hits. So we hit them with that and surprised them, So that's how we slowly won the audience over. I think back in the day was more so than now, I had to say. I think in the 60s, the crowds were more integrated. I'm not talking about just the VJs, but like you had Sly Stone, with a black and white group, and so I remember the audiences back then were more integrated. And later on, when the band that I was in was also integrated band and integrated audiences and stuff, and now I think it's less. I think the music industry has really segregated a lot. You don't really see that much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I agree.
I think the genres really became, I won't say divisive, but separational. You know, like it created a great separation between the music, because and I don't know at what point that started, but in my mind, and I often talk to my son about this, is you didn't think about what somebody's skin color was. You didn't even think about that. It was just whether somebody was an okay guy or wasn't an okay guy or girl.
Right.
You know,
right.
you really didn't bother. And it could be Puerto Rican, it could be Cuban, it could be black. It didn't matter, you know. And I mean,
Right,
and where
right.
I lived, I mean, you know, that section there was probably the poorest section in town where I lived. I don't think there was any poor section in that section on Monroe Street there on Lower
Well,
End.
my house was on Monroe also.
Yeah,
We're pretty poor.
but as you went towards Fifth, you got nicer, you know.
I was making mayonnaise sandwiches at night sometimes.
It's the truth, though, Alma, when you think about it. As you went towards up the streets, the houses got nicer, and so did you know, everything got nicer as you went like
That's true.
Fifth, Sixth, you know. It's
A
true.
little
It
bit,
just is.
maybe a little, yeah.
My mother thought she moved from the ghetto to a palace when she went from 88 to 312 Monroe, because that's where she lived. And she did. She looked at it that way. That was like, like the Jeffersons moving on up, you know.
And I think all of us started on Monroe Street, because I lived in 59 Monroe when I was a kid.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so everybody came from Monroe Street. There were neighborhoods that were Italian or Puerto Rican, or you know, they were neighborhoods that were were divided. Yeah. But as far as the music went, you know, we never experienced anything but you know, praise and good feelings from people when we played. And one of the things that we did, because we had different musical influences, our repertoire was diversified. It was not just one. You know, we did rock, we did R&B, you know, we did Broadway, we did a lot of stuff. And we always had a great success with the people in Hoboken and people in general at that time.
I actually saw it on a record label.
Yeah, it's a record label. That's right.
There was a record label called VJ Records, and I said, you know, that's a good name for a band. Let's use that.
That's it. It's simple as that.
Yeah, right. Not very deep at all.
Everybody said, yeah, okay, that's good. That sounds good.
And that's how it ended up being spelled out, because that's what the record label was.
Right, exactly.
J-A-Y, not just the two letters.
By the way, you know, we branched out of Hoboken. One time we played in Little Italy, 11-day festival, outdoors. This 11-day festival, and we played every night there, and it was a great experience. You know, I mean, there were thousands of people.
Oh yeah.
So that was a fantastic. You know, when you mentioned, I don't know, just sort of a funny story earlier when you said the Blues Brothers, because one time we were going up to upstate New York, Ellicottville, and we got caught by some little rural police officer in a speed trap. You know, like it was 25 miles an hour, and I don't know, we're doing 35 or 40. And then he made us go follow him to the judge's house, where the judge was in his garage, and he held court in his garage after he put a hat on. And we had to pay a fine.
Yeah, we paid, well, $25 so we paid.
Something like that, $25, big money back then.
I don't believe they threatened us with jail because we just paid them. It's just, okay, what do we got to give you to get out of here? You know?
Probably all we had on us.
Well, Sinatra, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. There were a few other singers in Hoboken that were very prominent, but music and Hoboken are just interchangeable. You know, it was just, you know, Hoboken was music, and all types, all sorts of music.
Yeah, well, our friend Patrick Jude, also known as Patty Petrillo, he went on to Broadway He
Uh-huh.
replaced Ben Vereen in Jesus Christ Superstar. He had the role of Judas.
Mhm. Yeah,
So he
so
went on, and of course
he went
Julio
on.
Fernandez
Mm-hmm.
went into great career with Spyro Gyra.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I remember Julio come to see us play when he was because he's a few years younger than us. And
Mm-hmm.
he was standing there with a big smile and looking at me play as he was learning, and he became a great guitar player.
Uh-huh.
And him and I had some serious jams back in the '80s. Actually, later on, beyond the VJs, I would hang out, and we'd have some great jams there in Hoboken.
I have a friend. His name is Julian Hernandez. He's a great singer and guitar player. He was younger than we were, and he never lets me live this down. He said that we used to charge him a quarter to watch us rehearse.
Underneath Citro's, right?
I
In the
said,
basement.
Oh yeah, we rehearsed
only-
underneath a gas station on Fifth and Monroe.
we charged a quarter. I don't know. But even then, we were like, how can we make a profit on this?
But in terms of the getting to the question, I think that what it did, as I think in many towns across the country, as garage bands started sprouting up as a result of the Beatles, because that was the
Yeah.
biggest influence in I think every musician's life was
Sure.
that Ed
Mhm.
Sullivan show when those guys played.
Right.
Everybody's jaw dropped, and they were like, we didn't know what they were doing or how they did it. Now I truly appreciate it. That, and it just blew my mind that none of them knew music. None of them were officially trained. None of them
Yeah,
could
exactly.
read music.
Yeah, incredible.
And that's just incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, the stuff
Yeah.
that they did,
Phenomenal.
and I think that my point that I'm trying to get to, what did it do? Is we contributed, I think, to the growth of being a feeling of oneness, of feeling together. And it
Definitely.
just did. And I don't know that all things, certainly as time went on later, the country became more divisive. You know what I mean? But the
Right.
60s to me were like heaven. And I think this is the point that I'm trying to get to. It was a lasting influence to this day when I talk to people that are still live in Hoboken, how they, as part of their makeup, remember those days as being very transformative in their life and having a great influence on what kind of human being they ended up becoming. And that's power. That's mega power. And to me, I like I always said, I never really thought of it that way. But I think if you talk to any real Hoboken native that was part of that scene or was part of any of the musicians that were performing in that time frame, they pretty much say the same thing. That really made a difference in their lives.
Well, first of all, Sinatra made a big splash for himself. He's from Hoboken, but there were a lot of, like I said, a lot of singers and musicians from Hoboken, and I think it played a big role in the evolution of the music.
The town itself, I think, contributed, and although a lot of people would disagree about Frank Sinatra, disowning Hoboken as he got older, not really referring to that. I think he actually told a couple of people he came from New York, instead of Hoboken. Which, if you think about it, and Omar said this well, you lived in a place that saved you from the vagaries of the New York City. But at the same token, all you had to do was jump on a ferry or go down the tubes, on the subway, and you entered another world.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I hung out down a village, and I got exposed to all of these great artists and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So what it did, Hoboken's contribution was the melting of being able to infiltrate into New York and influence that scene. And I think, Omar, you had a lot to do with that yourself, where it spread out almost like a good not a malignancy, but a good thing. You know what I mean? It's where you just went out and influenced other places. And I mean, I know that's how your expansion of what you did later in your career
Right.
worked out, and
Yeah.
a lot of that had to do with hanging out in New York and going out. So the question being, what influence did Hoboken have? Well, it had a big. Mine also, for me, I went out and influenced in California. I went up and down the coast doing lead on jobs, or being the first band that got the bottles thrown at them when name bands were playing. And I was just, that's about as far as I got when I was doing my thing. But I got to be on the road and enjoy doing that, you know, sitting and doing the band trip and the whole thing. But
Sure.
the answer is that I think a lot of folks that came out of that, because they had that great sense, Hoboken engendered a sense of camaraderie and of unison, of feeling of togetherness, that I think we then spread out ourselves, moved all over the place, and then influenced other people. So it was just unbelievable to come out of a little square mile. That just, to me, it still blows my mind that that's all that is. You couldn't walk a mile without leaving town. You know, to me, you know, and here's where the dead brain cells come in. We were in a band. I think I can more talk about the band, our band names, which were the one I remember the best was Animal Bob and Mike. That was the name of it, and it just so fit me because they saw me, and I was a kind of, you know, jean wearing, beard down, halfway down, and hair, whatever. I was just a lot of hair, and I just remember starting, and I can't even think of who some of the people we started off for, because it never really mattered too much, because we got there and we never really got to hang with them much, because we weren't names. We were just like the lead on group or the opening act. And back in those days, there wasn't you didn't make a lot of money. All you did was just jump from one to another. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it was 2 gigs a day. You know, all you did was a lot of driving and a lot of short gigs where people just like, get the hell off the stage, put the other guys on, you know, that kind of thing. So, Omar, I'm going to give it over to you because I think you have a little more interesting things.
Whatever. No, it's all interesting. Well, I mean, just as like how the Beatles influenced me to want to play guitar, seeing Santana in the Fillmore in '69 just I don't know, opened up a realization inside of me. This is what I want to do for a living. And so I started to answer all these ads in the Village Voice for musicians. I would for like a year, I was going to all these different auditions until I went to this beauty shop in Bed-Stuy, which was owned by the 3 Wilson brothers' mom. And there was this band there. I was like, wow, you know, I wasn't the best guitarist technique-wise, but they dug me for my feel. They said, you know, and so they accepted me. And we rehearsed like every night. And I was traveling from Hoboken to Brooklyn, you know, every night, every day, 6 hours of rehearsing. And we were lucky. Somebody knew somebody who knew this manager. We got signed to Polydor Records and started to record in Electric Ladyland, Jimi Hendrix's studio. We missed him because he had passed away just by a few months. But I did get to jam with his drummer, Mitch Mitchell, there, and Santana's bass player and stuff. And so then we started our first tour. We started playing the Fillmores and opening up for acts around the country. We went to Hawaii, where we actually sold out a 8,000 place because the promoter also had the radio station and promoted the heck out of us. It was like a big lesson in marketing. It's like, wow, you know, you could just market somebody in this isolated place like Hawaii, and have create a star out of nothing. You know, it was, I mean. And so we sold out this 8,000 seat auditorium, the Civic Auditorium, and that was an amazing lesson for me, because ironically, in the very first show in the Fillmore of that tour, we were opening up for Mata Hoople, right? And after every song that we finished, people were yelling out, Mata Hoople, Mata Hoople. So we felt unappreciated. And then here was Hawaii at the end of the tour. It was like an amazing experience.
Cool, cool.
And little by little, you know, after a couple of albums, then the record company asked us to try to come up with some more commercial material, because we were like all over the map. The first two albums, like one of the most eclectic bands you ever want to hear. And and so then they decided to go more in the funk R&B area, and we had this song called Fence Walk, which charted pretty high in the R&B charts, I think 26 or something. And just like the Audubon Ballroom, then it was all the audience has now become blacker and blacker, and I loved it. It was we sold out Carnegie Hall, but that was still when we had an integrated audience, you know. And there were people from Hoboken there yelling out Omar from the cheap seats in Carnegie. And you know, we did TV shows. We did this show called Soul, which is on Amazon Prime, actually. Recently I found out it was a local television show, Channel 13, PBS. And this guy, Ellis Hazlip, he's a legendary presenter, where he had not just a variety show of music, he also had influential people from the social and cultural, you know, important people at the time, like James Baldwin, etc. And so, you know, Mandrel was life-changing, needless to say, for me as well. For me, without the VE Jays, there'd be no Mandrel, because the VE Jays is what was my training ground, man, where we worked hard. You know, we worked hard at what we did, and we rehearsed our butts off. And so I got better and better as a guitarist from that.
As far as I go, I kept on singing after the VE Jays, doing shows, writing music, writing songs. I got into, I had the privilege of working with Rodney Dangerfield on the road, and when he opened his club, this was after we had been on the road. It was a couple of years later, and I took my wife to Rodney Dangerfield's place, and I said, I wonder if he'll remember me, you know. So we were at the table, and when he did his shows, he would come, or you know, to the audience, and he would talk to people. And he came to our table, and I said, Hey Rodney, you remember me? And he goes, Yeah, you're that kid. You're that kid. The kid that sang at Ipswich. I go, yeah. And I was just kidding. I just said to him, I just have one question. Why am I not working in this club? He said, you're right. He got his musical director, said, put the kid on the bill. So I started working at Rodney Dangerfield's place. But after that, just stayed in music, and you know, and I've been in it ever since. And yes, the VE Jays really catapulted me into being able to do stuff like that, and to sing in front of people by myself on my own. And that's my story.